I'm live, eh? It says here I'm live. Guess that means I'm not dead. Going live stream. Live stream. Folks, we have a lot to talk about here. You know, a lot of chit chat on the internet about what's got people in bondage, so on and so forth. A lot of talk about common law, legality, equity, trust, estate, securities, all sorts of stuff out there as to why people are in bondage, let's say, and white people, things that people can do to get out of bondage or to free themselves. So what we're going to talk about here is trusts, estates, and securities. It's the basis of the system, let's say. What constitutes a trust? When is a trust actually established? And it's very, very simple.
Because he who comes into equity wants to come in with clean hands. I don't want common law either. Oh my God! Why did he say that? Because common law is ruled and governed by equity. Equity is the soul and the spirit of the law. I have a quote here for you to back up what I'm saying. I've given you an NOI, a notice of interest, that equity is higher than common law and is the soul and spirit of the law. Now let me give you an SOI, a statement of interest, backing up. This is proof. The following quote is from Institutes of American Law, 1882, by John Bouvier. Quote, "Law is nothing without equity, and equity is everything even without law. Those who perceive what is just and what is unjust only through the lies of law never see it as well as those who behold it with the eyes of equity. Law may be looked upon in some manner as an assistance for those who have a weak perception of right and wrong, in the same way that optical glasses are useful for those who are short-sighted or those whose visual organs are deficient. Equity, in its true and genuine meaning, is the soul and the spirit of the law. Positive law is construed, and rational law is made by it. End quote. Equity is not law. Equity is the soul and the spirit of the law. When Yeshua was here and the whore was brought before him, the woman that committed adulteress was brought before him, and the townspeople wanted to stone her, he said, "Ye who have not sinned may throw the first stone." He wasn't operating off a common law. He went against what the law of the land was, which said that they get to stone her to death because she was, out doinking somebody else when she wasn't supposed to be. He was operating off of equity. And the equitable maxim that he was using was, he who seeks equity must do equity. Now, that doesn't mean exactly what it says. What that means is, he who seeks equity, you have rights. Your substantive rights are held in equity. But you have to remember that if you're seeking equity, you got to do equity. You got to remember that the other side has rights too. If you come in as the plaintiff, or if you decide to come in as the beneficiary and bring the trustee in and make an answer for non-performance of the trust, you have to remember that the trustee has rights too. And that's what Yeshua was operating off of. He was operating off of the soul and the spirit of the law. He was operating off of equity.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the intro. My name is Vic, and just to give you a little history about me, I was introduced to this path by the book Creature from Jekyll Island by Ed Griffith. That was in August 2000, and approximately January 2001 is when I became fully vested in this so-called seeking the truth, and been at it full-time ever since. So anyhow, quite a few of you watching this probably already know me or heard of me. And in any case, let's get down to it here. So what I want to start with is to put things in perspective for you, is to do some screen share here. And I'm going to start with the birth process. This whole thing journey began here in this planet, into this system of commerce, governmental structure, so on and so forth, on the day we were born. So we're going to go back to that date, on the day that you were born. And so I'm going to bring up here on the screen share a document. This is the Form 1 Notice of Birth. This is put out by the province. This is now pretty much everything I'm speaking about here today is related for the province of Ontario. It's the same around the planet, essentially. Forms might be different names on them, so on and so forth. But anyhow, so this is the Notice of Birth. This is where it begins. And this is this form here is completed by the doctor, generally at the hospital or wherever the birth takes place. And so anyhow, you'll see here mother's information, and they're asking for the mother's current legal surname at birth, blah, blah. There's just different information they're looking for here from the mother. And I should point out here, in God's world, lineage is traced by the father. In man's world, it is through the mother. See, in this world here, if it's not done by the way of God, then it's done differently. And a man-made system is not the God-made system, so it has to be different than God's system. So in God's system, it's biblical. The lineage is traced through the father. However, in this system, it is traced through the mother. It's very important to understand that, because it's critical to this total overall understanding. Let me come down here to the child's information. All sorts of information. We got home, hospital, type of birth, where does the birth take place, the name of the hospital, the birth weight, the gestation period, the sex of the child, date of birth, so on and so forth, different particulars. But you notice here, there is no name of the child, nothing whatsoever to do with the name of the child on this form, on the day you were born. So at this point, you're nameless as far as the government's concerned. Sure, your mom and dad and family members have a name for you, but there's no mention of the child's name on this form. And in fact, the name of the child that we grew up with is not recognized in the public. The clone is. And we'll get to that as we go through this. And the child's name is his signature, as far as when we're talking about interfacing with the legal system, with the government system, the various jurisdictions outside of the kingdom of God. And again, this will become a little clearer later on, but so that's really your only name that's important out there, and it's your signature. Then down here, we just have the certification by the doctor, so on and so forth. So anyhow, we'll stop the screen share here. So that form is to be submitted within a couple of days after you're born. It goes here in Ontario, goes to the office of the Registrar General. After that, I'm going to do another screen share here. If I can find it. Hang on here a second. I got to do something. Oh, Lordy, I'm trying to find it here. Oh, there it is. Perfect. Sorry about that. Okay. I should stipulate that the birth registration process, there's 3 steps to that. Notice of birth, certification of birth, which is the one we're looking at now, and registration. So it's a 3-step process to actually register the event of a birth. Now, this is a certificate or statement of live birth. This is step 2 in the process. So the first one is the notice of birth, and that's the day you were born. Now, this is the, like I say, the certificate of live birth or statement of live birth. And so I'm just going to show you some things on here. And this is where the name of the child now first appears. Okay, now the name on this document is a clone. So for example, and I got some other details here to show you, to put that in better clarity for you, but nonetheless, so the name on this document is not the name of the child, not the one you think. This is a clone image of, and I'm going to use the default name here, John Paul Smith. So you have John Paul Smith in proper noun format. That name is private. It is not registered. What we have here in these documents is a clone image of that. Okay, and it's also very important to understand here that these names here start to be associated with a number. And let me put that in perspective. On the day that you're born, your mom and dad know your name, and your friends and family, so on and so forth, are aware of your name. The government is not, and there's no number associated with that name at all, and there never ever is. It's the clone image that makes its first appearance on this, in this case, a statement of live birth or certificate of live birth. This is the form that's filled out by a mom and signed down here. I certify that the best of my knowledge and belief, items 1 through 24, both inclusive, are true and correct. Okay, so this name is again is a clone image of your private name, if I put it that way, and it is associated with a registration number. Very important, name and number. Particulars about the father, in this case they call it the husband, and the particulars about the mother. Again, all the information it's filled out and then it's signed by mom. And division registrar, they've changed how they do this now. This is back in 58, but nonetheless, it all ends up at the office of the Registrar General. So I'm going to stop the screen share here again. And I'm going to have to switch over on the PDF here to that. Now I'm going to bring up another document. Now I'm going to bring up the actual birth certificate. This is the document that is issued sometime after the birth has been registered. Again, I'm dealing with province of Ontario. Now the name here is the same name that was on the document I showed you previous to this, i.e. John Paul Smith, all capital letters. Now let me be clear on this. It doesn't matter if the name is all capital letters or what the format is. If there's a number associated with it, it's not your name, meaning it's not identifying the man or the woman or the infant or the baby. Okay, it's a commercial thing now. So the format of the name is not really that critical. It's name and number. That's critical. And for example, if you phone up your credit card company, you got an issue, they want to know what's your account number right off the bat. Then you start to give them other information to verify that they're talking to the proper individual. It's never just name. Okay, and it's very important to understand this as well. It was the name of a child on the certificate or statement of live birth. It is also the name of a child on here. I'll show you that in a second. So here again, there's that registration number. This registration number ties back to the previous document I showed you, the registration of birth document, the certificate of live birth or statement of live birth. This number here is the key number. This is a global identifier right there, that registration number. It's sanitized, so you can't see the numbers. Certificate number means nothing for us. We use the registration number in particular because this number identifies the particular birth record. Now down here, we'll see if you can see that or not. It's a little bit small print, but this is from the Vital Statistics Act. It says contents of certificates, birth certificate, Section 43(1) of the legislation. A birth certificate shall contain the following particulars of the registration. First one is name of child. It's important to know also, and I've got the Change of Name Act for Ontario up here, and it's through various legislations, not just this one, but a child means a person under the age of 18 years. Very important to keep that in mind. Very, very important to keep that in mind. So we in fact have a name of a child up here, and a child is a person under the age of 18 years. I want to go back to, I'm going to go back to the birth document again, the certificate of live birth. Show you that again, because trying to get things in perspective for you here as simply and slowly, as methodically as I can. So bear with me. Thank you. Okay, back to this document. Now, your mother, I don't care who signed this form, your mother is the grantor. She's the one that made the delivery. She's the one that carried the product of conception and made the delivery. She's the carrier. She is the one that took it to the doctor. Doc, get it? So she's the grantor of this document, but there is a problem here. When your mother completed this form, and again, I don't care who completed the form and who signed it, it's your mother is the grantor. So when this document here, which is actually a registered certificated security, when it was handed over to the government, to certify the birth, your mother did not include a will with it. She simply handed over a very valuable document here, as you'll come to hopefully understand the value of this document. And I don't necessarily mean in financial terms. It's far greater than that, includes that, but far greater than that. So your mother didn't express her intent when she handed that document over. She just handed it over. It was like, basically, it's like handing a gold bar to somebody and walking away. I kid you not. What your mom could have done was, for example, was when she handed this document over, attach a piece of paper to it and say, and oh, by the way, my son John is the beneficiary of this security / metaphorical bar of gold. I'm just using the bar of gold because you can picture that in your mind very easily, a bar of gold. So my mom, gave their office to the registrar general a bar of gold for me, but she never said it was for me. So there you see. So you're not actually party to the situation yet because your mom did not express her intent. In other words, we have a grantor and we have a trustee, but we do not have a beneficiary at this point. And we have the documentation to overcome or to cure that problem. You cannot step into the shoes of the grantor because that was your mom, but we do have a power of attorney and a default power of attorney process so that you end up with not being the grantor, but you're the sole authorized administrator of your public estate. So again, there's a way to cure the problem, the defect. It was when your mom, again, when she handed that document over to register the birth, she did not provide a will. Her intent, she did not express, for example, my son John or my daughter Mary is the beneficiary on this trust of this estate. That didn't happen. So we have, again, it's very important to get this. So mom's the grantor. The government took the document into trust. No beneficiary named. So in absence of naming a beneficiary, the government stepped in to be the beneficiary. More shenanigans going on, but nonetheless, that's what happened. And so, like I say, we have a paperwork to cure that problem so that you end up with the sole administrative authority over your public estate. And I say public estate, and I'll get to, because that's what this document actually represents. So the name on this document, again, is the name of a child. Very important to understand that because there's something we should have done when we turned 18 that we didn't do. And I need to put that in perspective for you. So I'm going to take off the screen share off of this and bring up another form now for screen share. Just find it here. There it is. Here we go. Okay. Our public estates are represented by the statement or certificate of live birth. This estate is the surety debtor for the debtor, John Paul Smith, SIN number or SSN number 123456789. So what we have going on here is starts off with the John Paul Smith registration number on the birth document, and then here, that is the surety for the John Paul Smith on the social insurance or SSN account. Okay, and John Paul Smith SIN SSN 123456789 is the beneficiary trust. I'm just using in here, these numbers are just for default purposes. Okay, this birth registration is also my private trust security. Mom, as I said, is the grantor. It is this security that must be claimed and secured by us first and foremost, because everything you do in this world rides on that document right there. The birth certificate, this is the short form, the third document I showed you there on the screen share. This birth certificate represents the name of my public estate and the beneficial owner, John Paul Smith, registration number, blah, 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 blah. That's just a default. This is the debtor trust. Okay, so it gets a little confusing here, but whenever you have a surety in the situation, the surety is a surety for a debtor. The surety itself is a debtor. So this birth certificate, this evidence is not my or our identity, but our interest being this security here. That's our interest. Like I say, our little bar of gold sort of thing. It's identifying that document. It's a private trust security deposited with the Registrar General of Ontario, in my case, the custodian. Very important word on custodian. Custodian, if somebody's holding custody of something, it means they don't own it. If I'm holding custody of your car, do I own it? No, I have custody of it, but I don't own it. And this is the public trust. Okay, so this document here is held in a public trust. And the birth certificate is not a bond, but evidence that a bond exists. And there is a trust because of an uneven exchange. There is not and has never, ever been a return of equity / value to the grantor, John Paul Smith, the man or Mary in the case of a woman. So I want to scroll up here and kind of put that in perspective, starting with, this is about taking control, not ownership. Ownership, and any word or phrase that contains the word ownership, is akin to liability. So it's about taking control, not ownership. Again, we started off, we have the doctor's notice of birth. This evidences the existence of the child of God, the life, the true heir, and the sole contributor / grantor, e.g. John Paul Smith, the man. No number is associated with this name. It is important to know that the government does not register people when it registers events. It registers information about events. So the conclusion then must be neither John Paul Smith, the man, nor his name are registered. You're private. You are your private estate. You, the living, breathing man, woman, children, are the private estate. Man is not in nor part of that system. I get that it doesn't seem that way, but that's in fact the case. And that's why we say trying to fit man into this system is a waste of time. Putting man down as a secure party on a UCC or any kind of security agreement is a waste of time, because when that information gets entered into the computer, it's all going to go to all caps. So now the creditor and the debtor look the same. It is in fact why Winston Shrout is in jail. I have his lien filing statements. He made two fatal flaws there. One, he did not, he put man down as the creditor, as the secure party in the filing. And secondly, and more importantly, he did not secure the foundational security, which is the next one we're going to talk about here, which again is that certificate or statement of live birth document. What Winston had done is he secured the birth certificate, this, but not this. See, this comes first. So in order of events here was first there's you, okay, the living child of God. Then there's a certification of birth, okay, and then there's this. So first in time, first in line. First is you. This is number 2, and this is number 3. Now, the certificate of live birth, this is a registered certificated security, a foundational security with a registration number. This document, the original that the government has custody of, we only get a copy of it. This document security represents my public estate. Remember, I am the private estate. And this public state is the surety, the ultimate security and beneficial owner. It is also the target. They want to tap into your public estate and they need your consent slash authorization to do it. And again, Mum was the grantor of this security. And this is big because 2 things. Mum did not express her will when she handed this certificate or statement of live birth over to the government. She did not provide a will. And there's something that we had to do on her 18th birthday that we didn't do that I'll get into. And because of that, it is presumed that this security is abandoned. So we must secure highest claim to this registration of birth. Secure it, and you secure everything on top of it. Your life, your freedom, your property, profits, proceeds, accounts, all of it. This stops them from tapping into your public estate and from drawing on you, your energy, your output. You are the bank/banker. Now, the name of the child on this document is a clone of the name John Paul Smith, as I discussed before, or mentioned before. This name does not have a number associated with it. That being a registration number, which is akin to an account number. Pardon me, the name on this document here does have a registration number associated with it. So there can be numerous accounts out there with the same name or as derivations of the original name, John Paul Smith or John Smith or John Paul Smith, etc. And each one is going to be assigned a different number, means a different account, a different trust. Okay, so again, we're working from the bottom up. So next is the birth certificate. And again, I just want to scroll up here. So when I say foundational security, you start to see now that everything else that follows this is going to be on top of this. Out from here comes the birth certificate, which is called an extract from birth registration. So it's an extract of information. This contains an extract of information from this document. Okay, and again, it bears the name of a child. So whoever secures this document secures all of this. Keeping in mind right now, it is presumed that this security down here has been abandoned. So you're really, we are really in a very weak position here. We are not in control. So the birth certificate, this is the short form. And again, here in speaking for Canada, in order to get a social insurance or an SSN number or an identity card or driver's license, we must have a birth certificate to do that. Now, it's important here to understand, again, it's the name of a child on the birth certificate. John Paul Smith, example, John Paul Smith with the registration number. A child is a person under the age of 18 years old. So what we should have done here on the day we turned 18 is we should have endorsed this certificate to the custodian of this on her 18th birthday. We didn't do that, did we? That's why you're here. Now, what if we did do that? Just let me clarify this. If we had have done that on our 18th birthday, then unequivocally we would have been a beneficiary of her divine inheritance. You could have had whatever you wanted without having to enter into any of this. None of it. And the holder of this would be your trustee. Okay? So, but for whatever reasons, lack of knowledge, I get the fraud, I get the non-disclosure, I'm aware of all of that sort of stuff, and people want to go down those roads. It's going to be a very long battle. We're not here to talk about this. In fact, nothing we do, there's no fight here. We're not here to fight anybody. So we didn't endorse, it says endorse, not endorse. There's a distinction here between endorse and endorse. And when you're endorsing on, for example, a check, which is also a security, a negotiable instrument, you would endorse it on the back. You know, if somebody gives a check to you, you'd endorse it on the back, you know, pay to someone else, for example, and sign it. Well, these get done on the face. Endorsement is done on the face of a security. So we should have put some blurbiage on the face of our certificate. And by the way, we have that blurbiage as well. It's part of our package. If you go to www.restorethekingdomofgod.blogspot.com, there's additional information there for you to check into. And we have all of the paperwork available to cure all of these defects so that you do end up with control of and over your life, liberty, property, accounts, all of it. Okay, so instead of endorsing this certificate and returning it to the custodian so we could enjoy our divine inheritance, no charge, not have to enter into basically these conditions of slavery. Instead of doing that, we went downstream with it. And I'm taking this language from a deputy registrar general whose testimony we have, who states emphatically that that office does not create nor issue identity documents. The birth certificate is not an identity document, and that office does not authorize you or I to take that birth certificate and go downstream with it. The Office of the Registrar General does not authorize you or I to use that birth certificate to apply for social insurance or identity card or driver's license or bank accounts or any of it. They don't authorize that. However, and I'm just going from her testimony, these organizations will accept it as such. It's not that, but they will accept it as such. But they need but you're the one who has to walk in there and say, yeah, that's me. So you see what's happening here. Name of a child. So now you're going forward in life in the name of a child. So now you're in fact an incompetent. You're a minor. And if you read 31 CFR 3636, it tells you in there that a minor can be a person, as you saw in our intro, over the age of 18 who has not yet reclaimed his securities. So you see, when we're doing this, if we had have taken this certificate and endorsed it back to the custodian, that would have been making a claim here, and that would in fact establish what's called an entitlement, a security entitlement. And you would have been the entitlement holder. In other words, basically the beneficiary of this trust. As a man, as a woman, not as any of these other fictional entities, which when we used the birth certificate and went downstream with it, that's when everything changed for us. That's basically when we put a mask on. That's when you're no longer man, you're something else. You're a person now. What kind of person? Well, it could be a taxpayer person, could be a driver person, could be a banking person, could be there's all sorts of persons out there, a tenant, all sorts of things. Again, had we endorsed this certificate back to this custodian on our 18th birthday, none of this would have happened to us. Zero. You'd be free and clear and good to go and living in the kingdom of God right here, right now. Have whatever you want, your needs. This is about need, not greed. Very important. But we didn't do that. So we took the birth certificate and instead we used it to apply for these different things. So here again, you see social insurance or SIN. It's the same name, John Paul Smith, with a number. Okay. And any and all business that John the man does will be done in a name derived of the original birth registration, derived of this document here. Okay, and this is why it's important to secure this, because you're the one doing the work. You are the sole contributor / grantor. Except if you don't secure this, then you're not. Technically, you are, but you aren't. So we went downstream, we used the birth certificate to apply for these kind of things. This is actually a securities future. You're going to pay the taxes into the future. It's not a one-time event. Yeah, you're going to be a taxpayer now, and you're going to go to work, and so that's what it means to the government is monthly income. And we used the birth certificate to apply for things like identity cards. Again, John Paul Smith, name and number. Driver's license, John Paul Smith, name and different number. Bank accounts, John Paul Smith, name and different number. Phone number, You could look in the phone book and see a multitude of John Paul Smiths, but everyone will have a different phone number. That's a different account. Credit cards, John Paul Smith and a number, different number. All these numbers are going to be different. Certificate of title ownership to cars, houses, boats, John Paul Smith and the number. Deeds, John Paul Smith and the number. Securities, promissory notes, applications, all applications where there's a monthly obligation associated with it of some sort or potential future income for somebody, it's a securities future. Again, John Paul Smith and number. So the names could be somewhat the same or the similar, but it's the number that's the key identifier. It's like when you call up your phone company, you can give them the name, but they really need to have that account number. That's the first thing that they want is the account number. So they can pull it up in front of their face, and then you start to say, okay, my name is, my address is. It's another verifying that they've got the proper individual on the line that they're talking to. So that gives you a rough idea here. What we're talking about. The key being is first comes you. Okay, the sole contributor grantor. There's nobody else in this birth registration, on this whole record here, that's putting any value into this situation here but you on this account, on your birth account. So this is why we need to, it's imperative to secure this document here, and we have the paperwork for that as well. So we have the paperwork to cure the defect of the mom not providing a will when she handed over the certificate of live birth. We have the paperwork to do this endorsement, even though we're late. It should have been done on her 18th birthday. We can still do it. Things have changed. It has to be done in a certain way, and we can't do it. We cannot try to fit man into the system. We could have done it here on her 18th birthday, but after that, things changed. So you can't go back now there and say, well, I'm here now as a man. It's like I'm, blah, 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 blah. No, it ain't going to work. So this is why we need to approach that in a different way. So we have the paperwork again to cure the defect of mum. We have the paperwork to do the endorsement here. So we endorse this. What we do here is we endorse the certificate and return it to the custodian to convert the custodian to a trustee. As long as you're holding on to that birth certificate, you're it. You're the administration. You're going to be perceived as a debtor. The target is on your back, and they have no obligation to you whatsoever. And they have no obligation to even respond to your communications, because right now you're of the wrong status. This is what we're doing here. We're talking about correcting our status from trustee to, I'm going to say, quasi-beneficiary. And I say quasi-beneficiary because of the things that have happened, we're not really the beneficiary anymore. We're going to bring a proxy into the equation. And again, if we had have done this, endorse the certificate back on her 18th birthday, then we could say I'm the beneficiary, but we can't do that anymore because we went this way instead, and that changed things in the system, and we have to overcome that. So this is ultimately as the status change is required here, and that's what this is doing. So this endorsing the certificate and returning it to the custodian of this converts the custodian from a custodian now to a trustee. Trustee is the debtor for all intents and purposes. The debtor has the obligation to perform. Okay, and again, we have the paperwork to secure this. It's a security agreement. So we have the paperwork for that. We also have the paperwork for filing notice of the lien in the personal property securities registries, whether it be UCC or Article 1, Article 9, under Article 9, or in Canada here, Personal Property Security Act. Bottom line is we have the paperwork available. If you go to restorethekingdomofgod.blogspot.com, there's additional information there. There's 3 click here buttons on that main page. Take it to different information. One is a sample of information. This is regarding reclaim your securities. Another is called must read. And another is the uniform securitization scheme. That'll take you through the process of what the paperwork is moving in behind the scenes on the day you're born, and who ends up with what with respect to being the custodian, so on and so forth. So bottom line is this, people, we have not taken control of our securities. And taking control of our securities starts with taking control of this. And again, it's presumed we have abandoned it. So now we have to do stuff to show them, no, I did not abandon that security. And the instant you do that, all of their whole claims against you, everything they're doing falls apart. Okay, so you see, by securing this, as I've said, this is the foundational security. You'll see this in your UCC Article 9. or in the Personal Property Security Act here, we're dealing with securities. So when they're talking about in the personal property security legislation, by the way, about securing property, they're talking about securities. They're not talking about the car. No. They're not talking about the car. They're talking about the title to the car, i.e. the new vehicle information statement or the manufacturer's certificate of origin. That's what they're securing. And by securing that, they secure the physical car. So by securing, same thing here, exact same thing. So by securing this, you secure your physical body and all of its output, all of its productivity, property, all of it. So by securing this, you secure all of this and the fruits of it. It all comes home back to you now. It's going to put a pause on here to stop the share for a moment. And in fact, I'm going to put the recording on pause here for a moment. Thank you. Sorry about that. I want to stipulate something here too. People get crazy ideas when they hear information. They start to run without having the proper understanding of the principles and the concepts. You cannot now just go up forth and claim to be the beneficiary. It's up to the grantor to identify the beneficiary. So you cannot go in there and say, "Oh, I'm the beneficiary. My mom intended to be the beneficiary." It doesn't work that way. Think about it. You know, there's a court case. I'm sorry I don't have it with me, and I can't remember the site. It was in the United States, and he took the government to court saying that they stole his name, relating back to the name on the birth registration document. Well, he didn't win the case, and the reason he didn't win the case is that the judge says he couldn't prove it's his name. See, we get it in our heads that this registration of birth has something to do with you and I, but there's actually nothing physical to connect you and I to it. Yeah, you got a birth certificate, but does that mean that had something to do with your birth? There's no proof of that. It connects back to the statement of birth, and you can apply for these things and you can receive these things, but there's actually no, you think about it, no physical connection of you to that birth. So you can't just go in there now and say, I'm the beneficiary of this. It doesn't work that way. You're not the grantor. That's up to the grantor to do that. That's why we have to take the reclaim the securities route to bring about that. And as I said before, quasi beneficiary, because again, man's not in the system. So you can't go into court either and claim to be a beneficiary, because the only beneficiary they're going to see is an all caps entity now, because we didn't endorse the birth certificate on our 18th birthday. And I should add in here also under the SEDA-KV Act. So we didn't endorse the certificate back to the custodian on the 18th birthday. We had 7 years now with which to do that. And after which takes you up now to the age of 25. And we still didn't do that. So now you're deemed to be lost at sea. Here we are, lost at sea, presumed dead maybe, but anyhow, whereabouts unknown. And this is why we take the reclaim the securities route, because at the end of the day here, you will no longer be lost at sea, but we can't do it by trying to fit man into the system. It has to be done in a certain way. And I should explain also that this reclaim your securities information came from the IRS. Someone inside the system laid out how the system is functioning and what's going on out there, what these documents all mean. This is why we don't ever talk about creditor-debtor relationships here. We talk about trusts, estates, and securities. And again, a trust is forming a trust or creating a trust is very simple here. And again, I'll give you another example here. You go to the bank. This is related, but not related to what we're talking about here. But just to put it in perspective, somebody wants to buy a home, so they go to the bank to get a mortgage. First thing you do is you're going to sign that promissory note, and you're going to give that promissory note to the bank. That promissory note is a security. Guaranteed. You look in your UCC Article 8 in the Securities Transfer Act legislation in Canada, you'll see in there, and for example, in the Securities Transfer Act in Ontario, Section 13 tells you very clearly that a bill of exchange or promissory note within the meaning of the Bills of Exchange Act Canada is not a security, but is a financial asset if it's held in a securities account. So these things are securities, and they're also securities are negotiable instruments. But securities legislation supersedes negotiable instruments law legislation in these cases. So you give the bank the promissory note. Let's say the promise, the face value in the note's $500,000, and you sign that note. That note is your property. You just handed the bank $500,000, and what should be transpiring there, same actually with the registration of birth, you should get an acknowledgement, but they don't do that. But when you go to the bank and give that promise, $500,000 promise to pay to the bank, it falls under sale or disposition of securities. You'll see it in banking legislation and tax legislation. And the bank should be purchasing that security from you, meaning giving you a check for $500,000 and you're done. There's no debt. You give them a promise to pay for $500,000. They should be purchasing that from you and giving you a check for $500,000. And you hand that check over to the seller of the house. It's checks made payable to the vendor, and you move into the house. But that didn't happen. It didn't happen. And so in other words, they never gave value for that security. And because they never gave value for it, that's why they're holding something that belongs to you now in trust. See, it's not a contract. You're in a contract is you give a guy a canoe for a bicycle. So you give him a canoe, you get a bicycle. We're done here. It's an even exchange. Well, in the case of this is right across the board, people. I'm talking on every single solitary thing you put your signature to. It has some sort of an obligation attached to it, a future payment, which is for them as income. That's a security. It's your property, and they're not giving value in exchange for it. It's called an uneven exchange. That's why equity is huge in this. Levels the playing field. So because they're not giving you an even exchange, and they're holding your property, they're in fact holding it now as in trust as trustee. And the trustee is with the obligation to perform. But however, when we give these promises to pay to the bank, we don't know what's going on there. So once again, they presume that we abandon the security. They presume that we abandon those notes. Well, the good news is we can always go back, in fact, all the way back to your 18th birthday to reclaim all of these securities and the profits and the proceeds of them. Right across the board. And there's also an enforcement aspect here, is because when the banks do these things, the courts are doing the same thing. We have transcripts on this. If you purchase the package, you'll get that transcript, and you'll get enlightened how that all transpires there. But see, when the banks, or the courts for that matter, because they're doing the same thing in the courts, they're creating, except that when they're doing it in the courts behind your scenes, they're putting your signature on things on your behalf unknown to you, as if they've got your authority to do it. But that's another story. So back to the bank. The bank should so when this transaction takes place and you give that promissory note to the bank and they don't give you that exchange, and the bank should be reporting to the taxing authority the disposition of that security. They should be reporting that, well, we got a security in here worth this much today, and they should also be reporting the capital gains, but they're not doing that. They are not doing that. And they should be doing that. So we can go back now anytime we want and go back and say, no. I give you a promise to pay in 1985. I give you a promise to pay in 1986, value, whatever. We need a full accounting of that. And that is your value. But this all starts with, no, I did not abandon that security. So, but anyhow, the main thing I wanted to stipulate here is that you cannot now just go forth and claim to be the beneficiary, because technically you're not there. There's nothing to connect you to that birth record. And so this is why we have to take the reclaiming the securities route now. And like I say, we have the paperwork to overcome or cure the defect where mom, being the grantor of the original foundation security, is the registration of birth document. She didn't provide a will. Well, we have the paperwork to, like I say, to cure that problem. We have the paperwork to do the entitlement order on the face of the birth certificate, which we should have done when we were 18, but we didn't, but we can still do that. We have the paperwork, the verbiage for that in the process. We have the security agreement with which to secure the underlying security. And when we secure the underlying security, we're also securing all derivative trusts, all accounts, deposits, everything, all of it, right across the board. So anything and everything that is connectable back to that original birth registration, when you secure that, you have secured all of it. All of it. Profits, proceeds, all of it. And then the information for the lien filing. And there's some other stuff. And it's all that, like I say, if you want to care to visit, if you're looking for more information on this, restorethekingdomofgod.blogspot.com. And I've given you information here. You've got information here now that some of you can move forward on this without. But if you need assistance, then we do have a package of information available, as you'll see in the blog there, and to help you out. So I'm just going to pause again. Thank you. Sorry about that. And we've got lots of tutorials. We've been having our regular Zoom meetings, and our Zoom meetings goes over each of the 4 steps. I call it the 4 steps, things that have to be done before we can start to move forward out there in the world, free of all the mumbo jumbo, all the liabilities and the burdens. First is the power of attorney. Second is do up the entitlement order, security agreement, register that, notice of lien. And so we've got the Zoom meetings that goes through all of that, so you can follow along. That's all part of the package that we're offering for those who require it. And I think that's all I wanted to talk about on this particular. We're going to do more videos, but I wanted to do a bit of an intro here to give people an idea what we're about. Thank you. And what we're doing. Oh, just there's my coffee, by the way. I did get my coffee. Yeah, so there's, you find at the blog there under the, if you click on the must read doc, that's where you get additional information. And so I'm fairly certain that a lot of you have not heard of this concept, this technology. And in the case, sorry, I want to go back to that promissory note to the bank. So in fact, you are the grantor of that security. When you give the bank the promissory note, you're the grantor. And again, the bank didn't give anything in exchange for it. They called it a loan. Remember, they call it a loan. So what's actually happening there at the bank is when you give the bank a promise to pay, they actually put it into a securities account, which, as per the legislation, credits the account. Your promissory note credits the account. Now, a few years back when I came across that in the Securities Transfer Act, I called the Law Society of Upper Canada, and I wanted to speak to, because they give a referral service where you can get a free consultation on the phone with a lawyer that specializes in a particular field. So I called the Law Society and I asked for a lawyer that's expert in securities. They gave me to an older gentleman who was a Bay Street lawyer, and Bay Street in Toronto that's the financial district. Very nice man. So very knowledgeable. He knew exactly what I was talking about. I pointed out Section 13 of the Securities Transfer Act and the promissory note, and then related it over to the securities account. And I asked him, well, whose credit is it? When the note is deposited, when the security is deposited into that account and credits that account, whose credit is it? He says, without hesitation, he says, yours, meaning mine. It's our credit. See, it's only the living that can bring value to the table. These other entities are dead. They bring nothing to the table. There's not a single solitary bank on this planet that's ever brought anything to the table. They can't. They're dead entities. They exist in name only. And it's not limited to banks, but every corporate entity, every legal entity out there is the same. It's you, me, the people. We are the sole creators of value, the creators of wealth. We are the gold. In fact, in that Form 1 notice of birth, it's called a physician's notification of birth. It's actually called the gold standard form. You won't see that in writing so much anymore, but that's what they used to call it. They used to refer to that notice of birth, the day you're born, as the gold standard form. See, when I went off the gold standard, we became the new gold. So yeah, so you give that promissory note to the bank and they don't give you anything in exchange, and the exchange should be dollar for dollar. So you give them a $500,000 promissory note, they should give you a check for $500,000. That's an even exchange. That's fair and even. That's equal. Done. Give the check to the vendor. We're done here. You got your house. No monthly payments. And I'm just talking mortgages. It's the same across the board. I don't care what the account is. What we're talking about, car loans, hydro, electrical services, phone services. All of those services are going to be tied back to your public estate. And so when we secure that, then we can really start to take control of the accounts, take control of our lives, and stop them from coming after us. Stop telling us what to do. So in the case of the promissory note, because we're ending up with a trust situation there because of the uneven exchange, and it's your signature on that note, you are the grantor. Simple as that. And the bank, in that case, or the court, as the case may be, and the courts are doing the same thing in behind the scenes, it's all securities, would be the trustee. And it's the trustee that has the obligation to perform. The trustee is responsible for the debts of the trust. So anyhow, we got a wealth of information on the blog site there. And if you sign up, there's a reclaiming securities information. There's a whole series of posts to bring you up to speed. It takes time. There's no rush jobs here. It's education is absolutely required. I refer to this, it was because I went through the process. It's a bit of a renewing of the mind. It's definitely a renewing of the mind. There's lots of things I learned along the way that I had to get rid of. That's just not applicable. It's real simple. It's going to bring up that screen share again and show you one more time. What do I got here? This document right here, everything you do in your lifetime here, in this embodiment, is going to ride on this document. Everything out there is going to have a name derived of this document right here, name derived from this name right here, tied to this registration number right up here, which is, you can't see it because I blocked it out, but it's my business. You got your own registration number, get your own. So everything you do in the world in your entire lifetime on this planet, it's going to be done in a name from this document here. So you start to see that, and at this point, you haven't secured this document, you haven't claimed this document. So surely you can see the significance of claiming and securing this document. Paramount. Again, I want to show you that one other thing here. I'm just going to stop this screen share and come back again. I want to show you that chart. This is important for people to get this. Okay, back up the screen share. Where is that thing? That other document. There it is. Okay. So there's you underwriting the whole thing, the gold standard form, the gold producer. Then comes this next, certificate of live birth. This is now we're going public. So we're kind of private here because there's no name. So you're in the private. You're the private estate. This document here represents your public estate. Okay. And everything after that, all of it sits on top of this. This is what we call this, and it is known as the foundational security. Some governments will call it a foundational document. You wouldn't dare call it a foundational security. That might give us all a heads up, but it's a foundational security. So by securing this, again, to reiterate, you secure everything on top of it. And regardless, we have to endorse still today, you can still do it. This certificate must be endorsed to the custodian of this, so as to convert the custodian of this to from custodian to trustee / securities intermediary. Just put a stop on that. So I think I'm going to stop this video here now, and for now, and let you guys focus, listen to this, and do some of your own studies here, and don't take my word for any of it. You know, you can pull up your legislation. Clearing the Vital Statistics Act says it's the name of a child. A child is a person under the age of 18, but we all went downstream. We all took that birth certificate and said, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go be a child. I'm going to be a 65-year-old child. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to pause this and pull that one. I got to show you this. It's on the blog, but I want to show you this here. Sorry, just a sec. I got to find it. Okay, I'm back here. So let's go into the screen share now. What the heck is that doing there? Hang on here. Just give me a moment. I don't need that to open up. Why is that opening up? Oh, because I didn't close it. Here, yeah. Here we go. This is 31 CFR 3636. Just going to scroll down here to the critical part. Right here. Minor means an individual under the age of 18 years. A child is a person under the age of 18 years. Keep that in mind, people. The term minor is also used to refer to an individual who has attained the age of 18 years old, but has not yet taken control of the securities contained in his or her minor account. And there you have it. Okay. So you could be 65 years old and still considered a minor solely because we have not taken control of the securities contained in our minor account. Simple as that. Could it be that simple? Well, you don't have to believe me, but yes, it is. So on that, I'm going to stop the recording. God bless you. Thanks for coming on and listening. And my phone number is also available through the blog if people have questions. Now, one last thing I'm going to say here, this is all self-education. We're not here to hold your hand and walk you through process. We provide some templates to get you going, to get to show you the way. And we have the Zoom meetings to tutorials, so on and so forth, to get you through the process, lots of those. And but this is kind of how do I say this, a self-discovery thing. In order to, people have to internalize this information. We have to have the inner understanding of this information, each one of us. We can't be reliant on other people to do everything for us. So anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this, and we shall talk soon. God bless. I will be back to do some future videos. So as I get some feedback from this too, it'll give me an idea what people are looking for, and then I can touch on those things. So, God bless. Name is Vic. Today is November the 17th, 2020. Thank you so much. Hi, I should add in here also that we're not one of those outfits that, walks you through different processes is going to help you get out of a mortgage foreclosure next week, or stop you from going to court or jail in a month or so, or a week or 2 or 3 days, whatever. No, so don't be contacting us and pleading for help to get you out of a mortgage foreclosure or any of these kind of things next week, next month. We're not here to do that. We provide the educational information. We'll help you with your education. And see, it's like this: everyone has to know how to ride the horse. It wants to go down this path of reclaiming your securities. You need to know how to ride the horse. Okay, and like you can search on Google to learn how to do that, well, we provide the information here that you can learn how to do that with respect to reclaiming your securities. But there's no rush jobs here. There's none of this so help stuff. Everyone has to get self-educated and can work together and assisting one another. But at the end of the day, everyone will have to know how to ride that horse without somebody hanging on to the horse for you. I don't know how else to put that. So please do not contact us asking us for assistance to help you out of any predicament. It's not what we're here to do. We're here to help you help yourself for the long term. It's knowledge you can pass on to your family, so on and so forth, and stop the nonsense. Mums and dads, or those thinking of being mums and dads whose children are still under the age of 18, they can have a different life if you care to learn this information. If not for yourself, at least for them. And it can be passed on from generation to generation, so that no longer is our wealth basically taken from us and shifted into, for lack of better terms, private banking interests around the world, and which is good for the people, none of which is, quite frankly, good for the public. This is where we have decay in the infrastructure. So we're the ones we're waiting for, but God bless you, I love you, and thanks for putting up with me. Appreciate it.